Okay. So to start with, this is a terrible title, but I was already locked in with it, so I couldn't change it. So a little bit about me. Been an IT professional here in Kansas City for about 6 years now. I'm an automation expert. That's what people pay me the medium bucks to do, is to go ahead and use a shell script to get rid of a lot of people. I escaped the .NET lifestyle. When I first started, I was a C# developer, and I quickly ran for the hills, valleys, and as far away as I could from that. And I love puppies. I'm getting a puppy in a week when I get back, so that way I can watch it. By I'm getting a puppy, I mean my girlfriend's getting a puppy, and I just have to live with it. So I love puppies right now. So let's go ahead and just jump right into this, what we're going to talk about. I could have sworn I had another slide there, but oh well, this will work. So we're talking about going to the cloud or hosting your own. When you start, at most companies, I've had to do this conversation about half a dozen times now with different companies about when we're going to do hosting, are we going to roll our own or are we going to go to the cloud? Or there's this concept of bursting, is that something we should be looking into? When you're looking at these things, there's a few things you're going to look into. The top three usually are cost. Cost is right up front what you're going to be talking about. Somebody who doesn't really understand how this works is going to be, well, I heard it's expensive. It's true, it can be. The next thing you're going to talk about is your architecture and use case. Kind of, what are you doing? Because what you're doing really determines should you build your own or is going to the cloud a viable option. And lastly is compliance. It's a topic that doesn't really get talked about a lot when you're talking about going to the cloud or on-prem, but it will come up eventually depending on what you're actually doing. So to start with, cost. I don't have any hard numbers right now, but just so you know, when you go on-prem, you have a lot that you have to look at right up front. And when you go on-prem, this is cost that you're paying right up front. You're going to start paying for gear, which is blades, servers, storage. If you're buying vBlocks, if you buy a vBlock, mid-range is about $250,000. If you're buying a full production dev system and it's pretty good, you're looking at $1 million right up front, just hardware. I've signed that PO, and I've looked at that and said, really? Okay. The next thing you have to do is you're going to have to pay for ops. You're going to need to have your sysadmins. You're going to have your network engineers. You're going to have your storage architects. You have to have all those people. That is upfront. That's cost is going to cover you over the year, and it might be upfront depending on how much you're paying your contracting companies if you're contracting out temp work. You're also, if you have your own data center and you're hosting your own gear, unless you're leasing space somewhere, you're probably paying for electricity. And that starts adding up really fast, especially when you have to worry about things like keeping your data center cool. That's a whole other topic about trying to keep a data center cool and not melting your gear. You also have to pay for rent. And if you have a remote data center, not just in a closet or a dock area inside your building, you got to pay for remote hands. Sometimes remote hands can be somebody that's just basically a dock worker, that you're going to give them a picture of what the back looks like and some simple instructions like, the red Cat5 cable that's 2 up from the bottom and 3 to the left, I need you to pull that and replace it with the green one that's on the right and hope they do it right. Or you have a guy that basically just lives in the data center, it's a full-time employee, that he knows what he's doing and he just happens to be sitting right next to it. You call him to fix things. And then, when you're doing it on-prem, you spent all this money, and then somebody mentions, what about like DR or high availability? Shit. Well, now you got to double this, because now you have a data center, and you probably have to now, for disaster recovery, build another data center geographically different than the other place. So like somewhere like, usually like in Texas, or somewhere in New York, or Virginia, or out in California. And every time you build a data center, it looks the same. You're doubling, you're tripling your spending. And then lastly, if you're actually going to build a cloud and not just hosting it, you're going to have to get cloud software. So you can get something like OpenStack, which I don't know the price of OpenStack, but it's open source last I checked, so you have some support there. Or you can go the Cisco route and use UCS Director. And UCS Director is super expensive up front, and it only gets more expensive the more you use it. My favorite thing I ever heard from Cisco when building my own cloud with that was, UCS Director doesn't do that. We have this other product for another $25,000 that will take care of it. Oh wait, hang on, I lied. It's actually $10,000 just for support. And then you get that product, and oh, you wanted to do that? Well, you need this product. It actually has it. That's a fun game that nobody likes to play except for Cisco. That's kind of your on-prem. That's just a really kind of high-level gloss. When you go to the cloud, everybody's like, hey, it's cheaper in the cloud. It can be. It depends on your size. If you wanted to build this giant data center up front in the cloud, it's going to be expensive up front fast. Where the cloud is helpful is if you're just starting up and you don't have a whole lot of resources, websites are a lot to do, your growth can be fairly cheap. You can get on Amazon and host a website pretty much for free for a year. As long as you don't use much more than a micro and you don't need much data, you can get away with pretty fairly cheap. Reasonable size startup probably can run for a couple $100 a month. Also with cloud, it's not so much when you get there, it's the journey of how you're going to get there with the cloud. You can have a really fun time with the cloud by automating a lot of your work, so that way as you're building, it just grows when you need it to. This can be difficult if you don't know what you're doing, because when you work with something like AWS will give you all the rope in the world, and it's very easy to hang yourself with it. Just know that when you use something like AWS or Azure, and you get a public IP, those public IPs are usually known what ranges they are. If you don't lock it down, you're going to get hacked very fast. I stood up a capture the flag server for a hacking competition. Did not know this. Got an email 12 hours later from Amazon saying, hey, you're about to max out your mail server. Is that a problem? I'm like, what are we talking about? There's no mail server set up on there. Sure enough, I looked. As soon as the server went live, I was getting crawled by every bot across the planet. I had been hit over 500,000 times from China, 350,000 times from Germany, and for some reason, like 27 times from Brazil. I know that number is exact because I was like, what? They had hacked into my system that was set up for hacking. And so, as a smart person, I went ahead and just turned on the firewall and said, block everything, which includes me, because I didn't think about that. When it's on the cloud, you can't actually get to that system. It's somewhere else that is on a server somewhere with a name that is unrecognizable, and if you call Amazon, they're not going to give a shit. So I had to start over from scratch. Just know when you're on the cloud, there's a lot of things you take for granted, like being able to just walk down a keyboard and a mouse and plug into a tower. That doesn't happen. On the cloud, if you lock yourself out of your system, you have locked yourself out of your system, and it works really well to keep you out.
What logging did you have to get all those numbers? That's pretty interesting.
It was a Windows server, so I just went to the event viewer. I saw every time somebody's firing off an email. Yeah, it was Windows Server 2008 or something like that. But the best part was, they hacked the server. They did not hack anything with the game that was to be played, which was to hack a website. They never found the database, they never found the website. So they were really stupid, because that was not protected at all. They could have taken everything out of that database. And then, once you kind of get to the point of maybe you already are an established company, and you have your own hardware that you're hosting. And you're thinking to yourself, well, we want to go to cloud, but we have all this gear already. So you're like, all right, well, let's go ahead and look into this idea of bursting. And so with bursting, you can take your gear and have some cloud software set up that would do your automation for your growing, and you can then balloon up into the cloud whenever you need to, burst into the cloud. This is helpful because, say, your company focuses on sales. Now, you know that like 3 weeks of the year, that you're just going to get slammed, and your hardware will not be able to support this. But it's not very cost effective for you to go ahead and buy a whole bunch of new gear. Because I forgot one big thing with on-prem. When you buy on-prem hardware, it's usually like, hey, guess what? You bought that, and in 3 to 5 years, you're going to have to upgrade that. With cloud, that should be upgraded behind the scenes, and you'll never see it. So you're like, well, I don't want to buy this gear, because why would I want to buy another V-block, or why would I want to buy a couple more blades, a whole bunch more memory, when these 3 weeks of the year we'll just burst into AWS or Azure, and then pay that cost for 3 weeks of service, and just power it down. We don't need it anymore. So when you're looking at, should we go directly cloud or on-prem, if you've already got something set up, and you just need some extra space, burst into the cloud. Why go all in? You can do whatever you want. The next thing to really think about is that your use case. What are you doing? What's your applications do? What are your websites hosting? You know, are you Facebook? Are you collecting private user information and then magicking it and making a profit? Probably going to the cloud is okay, but at a certain point, you're going to build your own. It's going to get huge. Or say you want to be the next Dropbox. All right, storage in the cloud is dirt cheap. We'll go there, right? True. But where do you get bid at? When you go to the cloud and you're transferring data around, you have to pay for the bandwidth. If you don't think about the bandwidth, that can add up real fast. You think, okay, if every user is uploading and downloading about a gigabyte every month, and I have 1,000 users, that's a terabyte going across. And if you know there's at least one guy on there that's storing everything that he's ripped off of Pirate Bay ever, and you wonder how this one guy gets a petabyte every month, but he doesn't. You don't know why he has the entire anthology of Doctor Who stored in 4K, but he's got it. These are things you have to kind of look at for your use case, because it's very easy to do something where you think that you're going to build a very cheap, storage-friendly something on the cloud, and end up blowing right through your budget because you forgot to think about transfer rates through over the internet and how many people are just going to be using it. Another thing too is licensing. A lot of companies will let you use your licensing, so if you are a Microsoft shop and you go out to the cloud, you have a volume license. Usually those transfer, even to AWS, you can transfer over your volume license. So if that's what you're doing, look there. And when you're deciding, also when you start deciding your use case, are you a Windows shop, or are you a Linux shop, or are you a mix of both? If you're just strictly a Windows shop and you want to go to the cloud, that's pretty simple. Azure's your choice. If you're doing just Linux stuff, probably best just to stick with AWS. The last thing here is compliance. Now, a lot of people don't really think about compliance, but this is something that will come up depending on what your company's doing. I believe C2FO is financial sector stuff, so that's PCI compliance. And I've worked for companies that have PCI compliance. AWS and Azure, most cloud providers are PCI compliant. It's a cert you can get that says, hey, look, you passed these tests, we're compliant, you're good to go. Why this is important is that insurance companies that you have to cover you in case of a data breach or something like that, they give the thumbs up, say, well, you were in a compliant situation, we'll cover damages. Same with the government cloud. AWS now has a government cloud where you can set up all your stuff off to the side and say, this is now stuff for the government, it's behind some extra walls of security, and that way it's good. It has some ISO certs that say, hey, this is government certified, so if something happens, insurance companies say, hey, we're good to go. But there's this third thing right here, HIPAA, the Health Insurance Portability of something Act, Affordability Act. Anyway, HIPAA is kind of a big deal in the healthcare industry. HIPAA basically says for your health insurance providers, they need to keep your stuff secret. They can't just disclose this information. So when you go to, this is important, so your employer couldn't go to your insurance provider and say, man, what is wrong with this guy? I need to see if he's sick with something so I can get him fired because I don't have to pay for this. They can't do that anymore. Does anybody know when HIPAA got enacted, by the way? 96. So up until 96, your doctor and your insurance company would have no problem telling anything about you if anybody asked. It was perfectly within their rights to go ahead if I were to ask, hey, that guy, herpes? Yep, done. But now with HIPAA, you have to be a little bit more protective. And you can't disclose that information. Now why this is kind of a big deal is that PCI has those certs that insurance companies say, you're covered. Government has those ISOs that say, you're covered. There's nothing like that for HIPAA yet. Electronic health records are something that's really only been pushed in the last couple of years, and it's like, you need to get that electronic health records. And if you go to the cloud, you're kind of on your own. If you have your own gear, for some reason, having your own gear on-prem with HIPAA, your insurance companies are cool with that. They're like, yeah, whatever. We'll cover you if you have a data breach because it's your own gear, this is secure. But because there isn't this cert program or anything yet, for cloud providers, if you go to AWS and you get a data breach where HIPAA goes away, well, AWS is nice enough that they will cover $5,000 worth of legal fees. The average data breach for healthcare is over $500,000 when it goes to court. So that $5,000 might get you in the door to talk to a lawyer. Most cloud providers offer no support and no protections for HIPAA. So if you're wanting to build the next Cerner or NetSmart, cloud probably isn't where you want to go for your healthcare records. It's just something you wouldn't think about until you start doing a little bit of research on it. You're like, what? And now I kind of went really fast, apparently. I go ahead, ask your questions. I might give you answers. If you want to look me up, that's my username for everything. Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Google+, you name it, it's there. Don't make this easy, come on.
So, for the PCI compliance,
Yes.
like, do you have to pay a premium for the cloud providers for that, or is it you just get sectioned off into a different data center?
Generally, when you do the PCI compliance, they kind of expect you to take a little bit of extra precautions around what you're doing. If you're locking it down, and you're going to put it behind a cert, you're going to do some extra work to keep it safe, kind of like you would for the GovCloud. I don't think, last I checked, there wasn't anywhere on AWS that I saw that explicitly said this is going to handle payments.
Sure.
But they kind of expect you at this point to just kind of be safe. But they basically, the certs for on their side of things basically says they've done a basic understanding of what is legally required for them to say, hey, we've done everything up to our point to stay safe. If you get a data breach and an audit proves that you didn't go through like all of your steps, that's on you. But if it comes back that they got us somehow, but we were above bar, we're protected.
So they basically elevate all their data centers to that level of attestation. Like if you're PCI compliant, you have to have like a video camera pointed at the server or whatever. So they have like all that covered.
They know that those, like they pretty much just guess. The only ones that are like segregated is their GovCloud. The GovCloud is like completely segregated. They watch that like a hawk. Everything else, they just kind of assume that there's something on there that needs to be watched.
Yeah, because on-prem, a lot of times people make the choice to be like, this is our special area of PCI compliant.
Yeah, and you have special users. It's usually on its own separate network. Sometimes if it's on-prem, that way you can at least say, well, these people don't have access to it. They're not on our network.
Yeah, Amazon's PCI only counts. There's like 12 sections of PCI compliance. Amazon PCI compliance counts for like 1.5 of them. If you want to actually be PCI compliant, you have to do all 12.
Yeah.
But Amazon's counts for like data center security part of the whole PCI puzzle.
Yeah, it's much more nuanced than
Yeah.
it's like the word PCI. Like there's that's
You
like
can throw up a Windows server that gets instantly hacked. That server was not PCI compliant, right? You didn't do the other 11
Right.
steps.
But Amazon was protected.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but like they didn't get to it through the hardware. They didn't
Right.
break into the data center, and so the physical layer was compliant.
Mhm. Yeah, that's pretty much where that line is drawn. And there's no way to be physically compliant with HIPAA yet, just because there's not any certs to go, yep, we're good. So yeah, if you get hacked still for PCI compliance and it was on you, that's still going to be on you. The audit's going to come back and say it was you. But at least if they got hacked through the hardware somehow, and Amazon was like, well, we were certed. It's kind of like what happened with like the whole credit card thing, where they got a target where it's like, well, at the time we thought we were good, and now we've changed everything. So,
or like that movie with Damon Wayans, right?
which one's
No
that?
money, where he's taking the credit cards. Sorry, really bad 90s reference.
Is that the one where they with Jennifer Lopez and they steal the subway car?
Oh, that's a different one. That was good.
Okay.
Do you not recommend Azure for Linux? They tell you to go ahead.
I haven't played with it in a while. When we were testing out a bunch of different options, we basically took our slowest reports at the time and ran them in AWS, our on-prem CenturyLink, Rackspace, and one other that I can't think of. And that report took a couple hours on each one. On-prem took about 45 minutes. Azure, for some reason, on that report took like 2 days. Like I said, we got the worst report we could come up with, and that's what happened. Other things we ran tests, and we found out that, Azure beat AWS. It just depended on what we were doing to kind of decide. And that's another thing too. If you are going to go around a cloud, I suggest you get into every cloud that you can think of and run your slowest running report or your most used reports or your most used parts of your app just to test to see, because each one's kind of going to run differently. And each one will give you a little bit more selection or configurability around certain parts. So like some you're like, I just need storage, and they give you storage. And some are like, you know what, I need this to be SSDs, and I need this to be spinning disk, and some will give you that options. I think of like, when we looked at CenturyLink, they were basically just like, oh, you want some servers? Oh yeah, here you go. What's in? Servers? That's $15, thanks. Good.
That particular use case of the report, was that mostly database activity?
It was a lot of database activity and a little bit of our app kind of running. It was basically, we were testing to see one of our applications, it would make a call to go pull a healthcare record, electronic healthcare record to a forefront, and we just wanted to see if it had to go search to go pull everybody for like the last 6 months that had a specific disease. We knew that took a while to run, so we tested it and just to see like, how's it run on AWS with the same comparable year. So, and that's what we started finding out, is like, when you picked an SSD here, you picked something here, you didn't know what you were getting. And we didn't test it more than like once or twice, so we might have just got on like something that should have been end of life just by accident, as the guy was going through checking things off, like we need to replace this, need to replace that one, and miss that, so.
We had a good experience with Azure Linux nodes. Wrote a script, I think, in an afternoon that spun up 20 VMs for a class. Then we ran a script 2 days later till the class was over. Never had a problem. Like, doing something similar in our on-prem solution would have not gone.
Yeah. Well, there's like what you can do and then what you can do at all. There's some things you can't do without the cloud doing it. How long ago was that? That's the comparison to
Let's see.
I know a big thing with the cloud, since the providers themselves have to limit the ability of an individual to completely tank a rack, they limit the VM's IOPS. So then you have to get into that magic game of going, okay, this size VM gets this many disks, each disk gets this many IOPS, and you strap them together, slap it on the VM, now magically you get something more performant. And I know I've looked at comparisons between Azure and AWS, and VMs don't necessarily have the same IOPS, so then you get different read-write speeds. I know a gripe I have of Azure is trying to get the right amount of IOPS to run a SQL Server as a VM, as opposed to their PaaS or DB as a service solution. Yeah, the SQL Azure is what they call their DB as a service server. So that plays into it as well. I know I slapped together a VM, I'm like, all right, great. And then the restore took like 30 minutes. I'm like, that's crap. And then you slap a bunch of premium disks on it, and then all of a sudden it's down to like 9 minutes. I'm like, okay, that's much better.
Another thing you have to take into account.
Well, it really depends on what you're doing. I mean, for the SQL Server I built, it was 5 premium disks to get I think it's like 5,000 IOPS a piece. Strap them together, now I have 25,000 IOPS for this one server. But then it was magically finding which VM size I had to go with, because each one's limited to the number of disks you can attach. So, and then, Microsoft SQL Server license, so it's like a $2,000 VM each month. But I don't pay the bill, I just know what it costs.
Yeah, whenever you're on VMs, you always have to, if your test comes out really bad, like it takes 2 days, you could have just gotten put in a place with a bunch of other bad tenants that you just weren't getting any cycles. They, for whatever reason, were higher than the scheduler.
Yeah.
What was it about SQL Azure that was weird?
The architecture of my apps that my developers written, where they had some like circular dependencies in the app, in their database, so like lack of foreign keys and stuff like that, just poorly designed. Couldn't just lift and shift.
Couldn't just export scripts.
It would have been nice, but yeah, that's what we're unwinding, so we can't move.
So I come from an agency background, so I'm going to have some questions that aren't necessarily on the programming side.
Yeah, do it. Have at it.
Tell me about Azure's account handling when I need to segregate. I have a master account, and that allows my developer sets to reach into sub-accounts without having actual accounts, like a third-party role, go in and manage. Do they have comparable versions?
I'm gonna turn this over to the man in the yellow shirt.
So there's, Azure has basically an old cloud and new cloud, service manager and resource manager. Service manager is the old one that's deprecated or going to be deprecated. Resource manager has RBAC or role-based access control. So you can say, here's a user that only gets access to this resource group. And you can say this resource group has these VMs with this storage account, things like that, and you can actually get, this resource group costs this amount of money.
Yeah, that was going to be a follow-up.
So that's kind of neat. But feature parity from the old cloud to the new isn't necessarily 100% yet. So there's some things that are lacking, but there is that level of control there.
Would this be analogous to the newer VPC layout for Amazon? Like they have a
So
whole-
VPC is what, virtual private cloud?
Yeah.
So there's a virtual network, which would be analogous to that. So you can isolate your environment in Azure. And then you can set up a VPN tunnel to get to it securely. With
But
the
they're
private
old
network.
versus new. It's
They're both there. So old and new, you can do a virtual network,
Um,
which is equivalent to Azure or AWS's.
Okay, next follow-up, because it was the favorite thing I had about AWS. Tell me about snapshots versus disk image, trying to restore to put a snapshot back on a volume attached load. How does that compare over in the AWS land? And does anybody on the high level know what I'm talking about before he answers?
A little bit, go into it a little bit.
Okay. So I set up most of my instances will call out to the main service under roles. They can snapshot their own running disk while it's hot. So every 10 minutes you'll get a snapshot of the disk. And it only costs you the differential between what's changed. So it's fairly cheap. You can run those snapshots and they'll just decay over time and delete themselves if you script it well. If you have a problem, you can bring up that snapshot straight onto a new disk, attach it to the instance, and you have both versions running at once. No bringing it down, no nothing. You can reach on your old disk, grab whatever someone deleted on you, and bring it back in. Snapshots are great for really quick recoveries. But if I needed something a little more stable, we would create an AMI, which is a full disk image. That usually should involve bringing it down, and then you can boot the whole thing back up and just launch an instance with that disk as the base rather than, say, base Linux.
But then you have a time cost of bringing up the AMI.
A little bit. It takes longer, and getting stuff from one server to another, it's totally different servers. It's not a disk you can just attach. So those are the concept differences. Do they interplay over on Azure in the same way?
So I'm aware of disk snapshots. I haven't played with that to know the intricacies yet. There is the notion of a capture to like convert it to an AMI, and again, this is my assumption. I haven't played with AWS enough, but it's destructive in that you have to. I'm in a Windows world, so I have to sysprep my server, and then I can actually go and initiate a capture, and I'll actually delete my VM and then give me an image that I can boot new VMs off of that image.
Okay, so that's analogous to an AMI. Gotcha. No snapshot comes down of it then.
I believe it's there. I don't personally have experience with it, so I don't know.
Okay. One more.
All right.
I have been off the AWS news front for about 4 months now because I left the agency. What's happening with their innovation side? I know Aurora was coming and going, and that's
Aurora DB.
it's a specialized version of MySQL. It's basically MySQL that sits on their really nice hardware. I went through the thing. It was wonderful. Very impressive. They are innovating the living hell out of everything on that side. What's happening on Azure is they're still just basic Windows boxes, or their services that spread across that mirror something like the development of Aurora.
I'm an AWS guy too, so I don't know.
You can run SQL Server on Linux.
It just went live, I believe, on the container service, I'm not sure, just today, I think.
Something about Docker? Yep. Okay.
There's a lot of Microsoft stuff on that, that Microsoft, it's just Microsoft.
It's not so much if it's a Microsoft solution or not, it's the stuff that AWS is developing is meant to bridge like all their services into one another a little more tightly, and it's not that you're buying an instance that does this thing. That was a highlight.
There's not the same kind of continuum with Azure, it's a little bit more assembled, your own solution kind of thing. I think seeing some evolutions in that direction, but right now, if you want to do this, go make it work for yourself. If you want SQL Azure, if you want MySQL, go install it in Azure Marketplace. In a similar way, Docker image is a community marketplace to the Azure Marketplace. So if somebody's come up with a really cool implementation of Docker or Hadoop or you name it, they can create an image and put it up there. And if you have licenses or open source, then you can just put that overnight. And it'll launch.
Got another one?
No. Not right now.